Hello world of YouTube and welcome to the last installment of week-long list week decade and wrap-up 2010s edition. This week we're going to be breaking down my least favorite and favorite movies of the last decade, along with a little gaming related list on Wednesday involving my favorite bosses of the decade. But today we're digging down deep. We're getting full of shit as we look at the worst films that I ever watched and put myself through over the last decade. Now this decade, like any decade, is full of great films, a lot of masterpieces, and yet there is always a crop of movies that seem to come up, especially in the past decade, that get a myriad, a wave of attention. And that's really where pretty much all of these films caught my attention, because I follow things on the internet so closely and I see films get so much hate. I'm like, is it really that bad? I'm that guy. The people who watch people talk about shitty movies and are like, is it really that bad? Or are people just overextending their opinion? And all of these are instances where that's not the case. While some of them, I can see them being enjoyed in an ironic setting, fundamentally they are bad films. And I'm going to go over my 11 favorites, least favorites, the top 11 shit stains that happened over the last decade. Starting
in his very first movie.
I'm so excited!
Fred, the movie.
Now the only reason why I checked this out, because it was the first of a series of YouTube success movies. You know, every successful person on this platform seemingly got a movie at some point throughout the last decade, and Fred was just the one that got to the finish line first. What's funny is the only reason why I checked this out is because Philly D in a video said, you know, we should watch it if only to support Lucas and to show that YouTubers are successful parts of can be a part of mainstream success. And man, was that just some shitty advice all around. But this film is an exercise in frustration. It is a litmus test on how much you can endure the epitome of obnoxiousness. Fred as a character only works in bite-sized content increments, and so to see it stretched out across a feature length with everyone sharing the scene with Fred, trying to chew as much scenery as Fred, it's a gaudy mess. That isn't funny. It's not even like fundamentally edited well. There's a lot of problems at its core with this film that I'm not a fan of. And while it's at the bottom of the list, be assured, it is still not a golden goose. It is a shining turd that, while may have helped other better YouTubers get some success down the line, it was not a good first wave of content to be poured out into the mainstream from this platform.
It's a product of thoughts you create. Now do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real.
A movie so bad they kind of kept Shyamalan's name buried in the production. But with that being said, a lot of these Shyamalan-isms are prevalent on here. You got Will Smith to act like the piece of wood people have been trying to get him to act like for decades. Seemingly any void of character that is normally present in a Will Smith performance is gone. And it doesn't help that his son, Jaden, much love to you, meme king extraordinaire, doesn't boost anything in this film. The world in it is uninteresting, the pace is glacial as fuck, and there is very little of value here. Shyamalan certainly had other bad films to come out this decade, but this was the worst, if only because it is so agonizingly boring across the board. All of the dialogue is akin to paint drying. The plus side is, it's a decent sleep aid if you need it.
Well, you've done a great job, Rod.
Meet Rod.
Hi.
A young software salesman on his way to achieving his Silicon Valley dream.
almost omitted this from the list, if only because Birdemic has reached the same quality of The Room as like a so bad it's fun to watch with friends film. You know, it's up there with The Room and one of the other movies I'm going to talk about later on this list. And, you know, I could see that being a reason why someone might not put it on this list, because you could have some fun memories with this film. But fundamentally, this film is terrible. It is preachy beyond belief, with a misguided attempt at delivering its message, with acting that, by and large, puts Will Smith and After Earth to shame for rigidness. The effects are terrible. You know, another movie that came out this decade that I honestly love and adore, even though it may not have the best budget in the world, is Who Killed Captain Alex? That film is amazing. If you've never seen it, please give it a watch. It's a low-budget film made in Africa, and it's amazing. It has the craziest shit in it. It uses Kiss from a Rose by Seal in the best way possible. And that is how you make a low-budget film memorable. Birdemic is not. James Wan seemingly doesn't know how to make people work in an acting space, and he doesn't know how to work a camera. So I don't know why he's making movies, because the shot composition across the board in this film, terrible. The two legitimately okay things I see in this film are the birds reference, you know, with the two most redeeming things I could think of in this film personally are the birds reference, because obviously it's a ham-fisted reference, but it's one you got to make when you have a film of this caliber, even if it undercuts how great The Birds actually is, a film that I genuinely really love. And Whitney Moore. I adore Whitney Moore. She's amazing. And while this may have been the worst introduction I could have had to this particular person, she is seemingly a really, really nice lady. I like the stuff that she makes on the internet, and I'm glad that she has sort of had this second life on the internet thanks to her time at SourceFed, really giving her a chance to spread her wings to a bigger audience, because she seems really cool. I'm willing to take off a little bit because it's a lower budget film. Most of these, from this point on, have no excuse. Like,
is Hunter Dunbar here tonight?
That's enough.
I need to get an autograph. Don't let him do this to me. I'm a fan. I'm a #1 fan.
I mean, it's not necessarily a super budget movie, but it's got actors in it that are known for other things. It's got a director who seemingly has done work in the past, directing, and while it is similar to Birdemic now as a so bad you should watch it for your friends for how cringy it is, that's another reason why it's not as high on this list. This film was really bad. It was my worst film of last year. Still is. One of the weirdest things you could ever watch, if only for John Travolta's acting. It is something else, man. He is channeling something in the weirdest way. A lot of the dialogue is oddly written. It is the most Steve Buscemi Hello Kids meme you could ever think of. A lot of the gore and horror seems a little misplaced, and the message it may be trying to deliver is buried under a shroud of horrible, similar to Birdemic. And I think that's why it's becoming this sort of watch with friends for laugh film, because a lot of those type of movies are like that. But The Fanatic is, while the worst film of last year and one of the worst films I've seen in the last decade, still ain't the cream of the crop. It's got some issues, but man, we got some bigger steams to talk about, like...
What happened? You're gonna tell me, you know that?
Please don't make me say it.
Don't say it, don't think it.
If I tell you about him, you and your kids, you're all dead.
Bye-bye, man.
This film tries to do cool things, if only because they want to do a cool thing. Like the opening shot being one take. That's cool. Really poorly constructed. But hey, you tried. Casting Doug Jones as your titular horror character is a brilliant fucking move. The guy is an astounding actor. But you do absolutely jack shit with him. The title itself is laughably bad, and how hard they try to make it scary just doesn't work. The acting is weird across the board. Characters who try to hide accents don't need to hide accents, and yet they do. You have scares that are some of the weirdest, again, almost funny, in a horror film. You have a backstory that is bizarre, and you have just this whole plot that is bizarre and easily avoidable. The Bye Bye Man is hands down the worst named horror film I've ever seen in my life. It is a cut and dry, by-the-numbers horror film that really tries to do some shit psychologically, but fails because of its execution and laughable subject matter.
You despise me, don't you?
This film took so long to make, and yet its fruits of all of that labor are for naught. The cast in this film is bizarre. Charlie Sheen having a love interest of Hilary Duff, whose best friend is Wayne Brady, who plays a squirrel with really bad nut puns. You have a villain played by not only Christopher Lloyd, chewing it up like he's got a mouthful of gum, but Eva Longoria, who again just feels like they tried to pick the stars of the 2000s on a dartboard and threw all these darts at the board to cobble together this batch of characters, but also Christopher Lloyd's there. The animation is terrible. The product placement, while very obvious, did not help pay for better animation. The voice acting is weird, and the overall story is weird. The world of this movie doesn't make any sense. Sausage Party kind of tried a similar thing with Food Fight, and it kind of stuck the landing a little better than Food Fight. The world in this film is confusing. It feels so hard like it's a commercial in a way that isn't fun to watch.
You called in to report a murder. Maybe two, you don't know. And you say that all these murders were performed by the same guy, this, Smiley.
Remember when I said Fred kind of opened the door for YouTubers to do their own big budget projects like Smosh, and Fred did it 2 more times, and the Annoying Orange did a show, and Dubuscus did his thing. Smiley also existed, which is by-the-numbers horror film starring all of your favorite YouTubers from 2009 through 2012-ish, kind of. Shane Dawson's in it, which he had a lot of movies come out over the last decade, and he was a part of this one. And the story of this movie is, like all the other horror films I've talked about so far, or will talk about throughout the rest of this list, a little confusing, a little all over the map. Logically, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and the reveal at the end is one of the dumbest, laughably bad things I've ever seen in my fucking life. The villain itself, Smiley, looks terrible. The effects on the thing look inconsistent, and the acting is just as bad as you would expect from a crop of YouTubers trying to make a movie. It is not good, not worth a watch, and certainly about as bad as half of the pornos I've seen throughout my lifetime.
Pacman's a bad guy?
May I introduce to you Professor Iwatani, the creator of Pacman.
Adam Sandler had a weird fucking decade. Not only did he have dropped some of his objectively worst material of the decade with projects like Grown Ups 2 and Jack and Jill and this piece of shit, but he seemingly ended it on his highest note ever with Uncut Gems, so who the fuck knows what Adam Sandler's gonna do next. But Pixels is your by-the-numbers Adam Sandler comedy with all the same tropes of the schlubby guy getting the hot girl, somebody making a lot of sexual jokes, and Kevin James being fat. But it also has things like Kubert sex, the creator of Pacman getting his hand cut off, and objectifying women in the worst way possible by making them literal objects to win. This film is horrible. It's not funny. It has a really odd casting of a great actor like Peter Dinklage. This movie is just all over the map bizarre. And it spits on gamer culture, which is, already makes fun of itself enough. We don't need Hollywood doing that. We got the self-deprecation, guys. You guys just keep doing whatever the fuck you're doing.
Hey guys, what are you guys doing?
Did you guys buy your tickets 2 weeks ago like I asked you?
No.
Which seats are better, balcony or orchestra?
Hey Mitch, who's your buddy?
Who is that?
I just tried to hang up on him.
Can we get rid of this person? This is gonna be fun.
Unfriended has a cool concept for filming. They did it a lot better in Searching, but Unfriended had a cool idea at its core, and it made a shitty by-the-numbers horror film out of it. You guys know I love a Doom Space Mission, but I equally hate a shitty horror movie with a similar premise of a Doom Space Mission, where everybody gets picked off one by one in the worst circumstances, and everyone's an asshole. And Unfriended is the exact epitome of that. It is a bad film that is as predictable as you can get, with one of the most dull, uses of cool tech that you could ever come across. We had a lot of internet horror films come up this decade again, a lot of stuff revolving around social media and the potential horrors of it. But Unfriended to me was by far the worst offender of that type of film, because not only is it by the numbers and cliche with its top subject matter, but it uses a really cool concept in a really bad way. And that's just not fun to me.
Frickin' nuggets!
I want to see what it's like behind the wheel just once.
A Christmas Story 2, the official sequel.
Here's a little fact about me. I love A Christmas Story. Yeah, I may be Jewish, but I like a good Christmas movie. And A Christmas Story is a fucking gem. While we've had some successful decades that came after the initial popularity of a film, A Christmas Story is one of those films that sort of burgeoned into this cult success and this big popular thing around Christmas time. A lot of you probably know that. But a sequel to a film that is so that gets it, doesn't need to happen. And yet, we got a sequel to a film that is incredibly unneeded. It is full of hackneyed reference jokes to the first one that you would expect, trying to milk nostalgia for a film that actually at the point it came out people were already kind of getting sick of, but it's a film that I never get sick of. I always throw it on at least 2 or 3 times around the holiday season. It's a classic. It's a great film, and the sequel, it just shits all over that in this really bitter way. The look of the film just looks fake as shit. The first film had this way that it was shot and the way that it was, everything was framed that just felt so earnest and like it was fully embedded into the holiday season. And yet, its sequel feels so cheap. It's like the knockoff that you never would have expected to stem from A Christmas Story. And it feels so against what the original film was at its core. And, to just completely shit on a classic. You would think it would be the worst of the decade, but no.
Slušaj me pažljivo. Sprema se nešto veliko.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
We have the edgelordiest of cringe, trying to push the envelope in the worst way. A film that you would expect someone like Uwe Boll to make. A film with Drugged Child Rape, a Serbian film. It is a film that spits in the face of Serbia, but in a way way not needed. Full of excess and drug use, porn, and really no purpose. This is one of the most useless films ever made that seemingly is made to spit on anything that could ever be considered pure, and it is hands down one of the worst films I've ever seen, let alone of the decade. If you've seen this film or if you've heard of this film, you know the limits it pushes as far as making people comfortable, and this exceeds anything you could have ever imagined. It is dark, it is morbid, it is bleak, and it is not a good film at all. While films like Funny Games try to take satire on a certain thing, or films like Human Centipede are seemingly made to make people cringe, this tries to do both, and it pushes the envelope way, way too fucking far. Came out at the beginning of the decade, and I guarantee you, if anybody made it, knew they were making the worst film ever, they probably knew they were doing it. And they just watched as the decade churned out shit stain after shit stain, knowing theirs was the king of it all, and nowhere near worth your time. It is so far below everything that's come before it in the list. It deserves its own thing. It is disgusting. It is, you feel filthy watching a Serbian film. It's not worth your time. It's not worth any other breaths I'm going to give it after this sentence. It is the worst film of the decade, bar none. I don't care what film you think was bad. It's not nearly as bad as a Serbian film. That was my list. What did you think about it? Do you like these? Do you hate these movies? Do you ironically watch them with your friends? Let me know in the comments down below if there's a movie that I missed and should have included on this list. Like I said, tomorrow's list is going to be boss fights of the decade from video games, so hopefully you're excited for that. But either way, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, linked in the description is my Patreon, where you get early access to content, exclusive content, and help drive the community. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, situations, and I'll see you another day.